I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Looking for a motion to approve our agenda.
Move.
Second. Motion by Gage, second by Fikert. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. This time we'll open the commission meeting up to any public comment. Is there anyone here that would like to address the commission this morning? In person, on the phone, on the internet, out there? Seeing none, we'll move on to Erica Coughlin, HR Director, to discuss the compensation study. Good morning, Erica.
Good morning. Well, time has come to announce what we are going to do. We are still negotiating currently with the union on the implementation for their wages, but we are, for the non-union employees, we are going to do a full implementation of Plan A modified starting the first paycheck of the new year. Everybody will now be on a step scale again, and like I said, we are still negotiating with the union on their implementation. Questions, comments, concerns?
In your opinion, negotiations are going well?
Yes, negotiations are going well.
Okay.
Yes.
Make a big step with what, the impact on our budget, but in order to be fair to our employees, I think we're doing the right thing. And as you agree, we are professionals to come in and do an evaluation. We give every one of the employees an opportunity to review their job description to try and make sure that it was fairly representative of what their job duties and responsibilities are. And the folks that we hired have got quite a bit of experience with other entities within the state and in the region. So there's some
Correct.
significant changes, but I think it's a step in the right direction. It's going to be a little tough considering the property tax cap that counties are left with and have been for almost 30 years now. We're really right now for current year's budget, we're working off the previous year's 1.3 plus new growth. Next year, I believe we'll get the full 3%, which is way below the published CPI to try and keep up. So it's not an easy thing for us to do, but it's a step in the right direction to try and do what we can for our employees. So.
And you mentioned the questionnaires and the interviews that we had done. They also did brand new job descriptions for all the employees. So every employee now has a new job description. So if we need to, somebody retires, then we have the job description ready for them to go. Some of the employees have been in those positions for 20, 30 years, and job descriptions just weren't done 20, 30 years ago. So now we have those.
I think it was money well spent. It was one thing that a lot of people had been asking for on various levels for basically the whole time I've been a commissioner. So I'm glad we finally just decided to make the decision to get the wage study, and we agreed that, you know, whatever the results were, that we would seriously consider implementing that, and I think we're in a position to do that, and I think it'll work out well for everyone. So. Any other questions? Go ahead, Dirk.
Yeah, because I'm always a ray of sunshine, which I thank you for the going through the process. And I talked with Mike a little bit, and it's really hard when you go through a process that's what this process was, and then say that everything's always faulted, right? The 67th team left out of the basketball tournament's always pissed off too. I mean, it's never going to be perfect. Okay, now the not so, I gotta ask the question, is, I haven't seen the whole study. I really don't care other than what the whole number is. And with Mike's dancing around the topic over there and trying to reiterate how struggled the county is financially, or struggled or tight, and I've always looked at it as a closed system. If you're gonna give everybody in the county raises, and you got the highway department that's 12% payroll, and everybody else is 98% payroll, we know where that money's coming from, right? So my question, are we gonna infuse more money in to cover this, or are we going to, obviously these other departments don't even have enough room to take on the raise, right? you're gonna have to infuse more money into them. But in my case, I mean, was the intent to add more money to the budgets and spending authority to offset this, or? And I'm not mad, and this isn't supposed to be crabby and happy Christmas and all that stuff, but, I mean, I'm gonna lay around and think about it till we start the next budget year, so I'm just curious what the intent there was.
Well, we've already approved next year's budget, so the numbers that were in that budget, I'm confident that we can make those numbers work. And we know that we're gonna have to probably tighten our belt a little bit, because the hit to the budget is significant. And this was unanticipated in June, July, and August when we were putting our budget together. So to answer your question, we will do our best to make sure everyone stays whole in the 2023 budget. And we will do what's necessary to make sure those budget numbers work.
Okay.
That's my opinion.
Well, I think that's kind of been my concern right from the beginning on this whole thing, is how do you sustain it in the next year, 2, 3 years down the road, if there isn't some significant change as far as how the revenues come into the county, because, yeah, there are some COVID monies that can be used. I think, what, 3 million roughly could be used to kind of infuse into the budgets to cover some of this stuff. But when you've got, I mean, they talk about 8% inflation, my guess is it's probably more like 8 to 50% inflation. And when you've got a state and a city or municipalities that function and operate off of sales tax, and you add those additional percentages of tax increase onto the inflation, you're going to have more revenue into the state and into the municipalities, whereas the county's going to pay for that increase, whether it's an 8% increase or a 50% increase with a frozen revenue stream. I mean, it can't work. I mean, it's just plain and simple. In economic terms, it ain't going to work. And so there will be a point where something's going to have to give, and I am really glad that we were able, after all the years that I've spent in county government in this county, to be able to do a wage study and to try to pay our employees what they're worth and show appreciation for what they've done, and to try to maintain the employees that we've got. So,
and I don't want my comments to get misinterpreted. It's more of a big picture question about moving forward, where is this another obligation, albeit a good one, okay, that you got to figure into the system, which I would say yes, because the COVID money isn't unlimited. And everything Dennis is saying is absolutely true, but we've already been hemorrhaging money ever since we bid asphalt last year, and it went up 11%, okay? So my question comes from what the general big picture intent was, so we know how to move forward, you know. It's, we've already cut 16 positions, as you know, and I'm adding a couple back, but, you know, that's like $700,000 to $800,000 a year that we haven't been spending on personnel at the highway department for the last 9 years anyway. So I don't want any of my comments about the wage study. I was happy that you're implementing it, because if you go through the process and then decide, well, that was nice and we got a nice handout, but we're not really going to do it, that's an entirely different thing. So I do commend you for that and all that. So, and I don't want my comments to be negative, but we're already eating inflation, as Dennis just said, and we all know that. And I don't know what's going to happen with the asphalt next year, but the money's going to go really, really fast. So, my comment.
Go ahead, Mike.
Well, if we're having this conversation, I've been through this and said this many times. The year I came on was 1995, when the property tax relief program was put into place, which severely limited counties at the time. There was a cap put on property taxes, and nobody likes paying property taxes, but as a reminder for most folks, the vast majority of property taxes go to fund local effort for education. The county collects those funds, makes sure that they're valid, and turns around and remits them to schools. It's not saying anything bad about schools, but that's just part of the way that the system works. This year in the governor's budget address, a week ago, they committed the state's gonna add 5%, if that gets passed, to the state's effort towards education. That doesn't do a whole lot for counties with a 3% cap. And I'd like to remind people that when that cap was put on, there was no allowance for counties to adjust to where they probably should have been because they were all over the board. And things in Brown County were much tighter than they probably should have been and had been for an awful long time for a variety of reasons I won't get any more in-depth into. But quite frankly, a simple analysis with the responsibility that Dirk and his department has, with a budget of right around $10 million, that ought to be closer to 20 in order to be able to do the things that we can, could, and should be doing, to provide the services and the level of support to that system that we do. And he and his folks do an outstanding job with the limited resources that they have. In addition to that, when that cap was put on, there was a program called Personal Property Tax Replacement, which was a solemn oath that the state made to counties, because counties did receive a fair amount of revenue from what was back then the personal property tax that was eliminated. It was known as the liar's tax. The state would send out a list and say, you know, how many refrigerators, TVs, shotguns do you have? And you'd write it down and they'd send you a tax notice for that. And it was known as the liar's tax because people would lie pretty consistently about what they did or didn't have. But at the time, in order to keep the state whole, when they put that cap on and provided the relief to homeowners at the time, they eliminated that personal property tax replacement fund that they promised to the counties that they would always have there. And to Brown County, that was $480,000 at the time, which was 28 years ago. So not only did they cap us lower than we should have been, they also took away $500,000, and what that's compounded since then. So it's been a very difficult time for not only Brown County, but a lot of counties. What's the point? Once again this year, Commissioner Sutton is on the state county board. I believe they're meeting later on this week. A couple of initiatives, and one of them that I'm working with legislators on, and worked all summer in addition to some other things, is a piece of legislation that won't be an easy sell, but to go back to where we were before the cap. To take the cap off and allow county commissioners to exercise their responsibility to do their job, to adjust the mill levy for the county property tax to whatever the existing need is, and to be responsible for our citizens. We have the flexibility to do with the limited resources that we're allowed to do the things that we need to do with that. So it's not going to be an easy conversation, but it's one that I've personally tried to prime the pump with some legislators, and I think there's a fair amount of understanding that is a problem that needs to be addressed. Whether or not we'll be successful with that, again, I don't know. But it's not something that, we're just sitting on our hands and complaining. It's something that we're trying to do something proactive. And then from a practical standpoint, the cap, in addition to the cap, we get new growth, things that get built, add to the base. Commercial buildings and things like that, and the larger projects are eligible through a variety of different mechanisms for tax abatement for a period of time in order to try and encourage them to come here, because it's very competitive throughout the country for those kinds of projects. And what that means right off the top is what we would get for new growth. The additional tax revenue for that is something that's just deferred from anywhere from 5 to 20 years. And as Dennis will tell you, and I don't mean to prime that pump, tax increment financing districts fall into that same category. We expect several of those that have been on for a number of years to come off and actually be able to reap those tax benefits over the course of the next 2-3 years to help provide some additional revenue and some funds towards that. So I don't have the exact numbers, but that's a broader view of where we're at with that.
Just another quick comment. In September, generally, September of each year, the County Commissioners Convention, all of the 66 counties go to either Pierre, Rapid, wherever, and have their annual convention. This year was the first year in all of the years that I've gone out to county commission conventions. One of the breakout sessions was counties in bankruptcy. I don't need to say any more.
So I think it's a good conversation, it's ripe conversation, and you're rightly so. Sometimes, you know, it hasn't been used as a slush fund, but the highway department has, you know, a little more flexibility, if you will, in the materials part of the budget, whereas many of the other departments are pretty heavy in salaries and that type of thing, so don't have that kind of flexibility. But I think we've been committed as best we can to make sure that, you know, we provide as many resources to the highway department as we can. It's not an easy job that you guys have, and it hasn't been easy this last week at all. But we appreciate what you do.
Kind of what we're supposed to do. so.
And how you do it, and we'd like to have more resources there, and we're doing what we can to try and get them for you.
Any
I
other
wasn't
comments?
bitching, it was just an observation or a comment.
Well, it's a good conversation
Yep.
to have right now with the session coming up.
Well, make another quick comment, you know, the last check I did, I think I mean, I've been labeled here on the county commission for years as being anti-economic development and anti-municipality or anti-city. That's not true. But at the same time, the way the funding works, literally, the city of Aberdeen's Parks and Rec budget is in excess of $6 million, probably closer to $7 million. And I forget right off the top of my head now what the county's jail and sheriff department budget is, but it's a lot. I mean, it isn't that far off. So, I mean, just the responsibilities that the county has in relation to what the state or municipality has and what they put into a lot of the things that the county responsibilities are. I mean, there's some inequities there, and it's been going on that way for 30 years, and I don't know how it'll ever change. I guess, you know, we probably haven't done the best job, that the counties probably haven't done the very best job that they could have done as far as lobbying. On the other hand, municipalities have been awesome. I mean, I sat out there for 8 years. Municipalities are incredible with their lobbying efforts. Counties, they kind of get, this is your duty, this is what you do, and it's just sort of taken for granted. And it's really disappointing to me, very frustrating over the years. And Mike alluded to the concern of the counties, the commissioners being responsible for funding education. We put the mill levy on. The schools call and find out what the values are so they can work a mill levy against the values, figure out what kind of a budget they're going to come up with. Well, I mean, you can't continue to add on to property tax and figure you're going to have enough there to fund the county government and then the education as well. For example, 2/4 of land that I've got up in McPherson County, 77% of the property tax I pay up there goes into the Leola School District. That can't continue. I mean, people will not have the money to pay their property tax, and I'll be amazed if the delinquent property tax list in the next 2 or 3 years, if something doesn't change, it's going to be pretty interesting.
Go ahead, Mike. I'm sorry, Alyssa, go ahead.
Oh, yeah. Can you go into a little bit of detail as far as what the implementation of this means, what kind of hit to the county budget this is going to be?
The implementation will take place the first payroll in January. We've discussed for the last several months now, we've been working on the best way to implement the findings of the study, and we've discussed a couple different options. But I believe we're in a position today to make the decision to do full implementation, starting with the first payroll in January for those employees that we know we've negotiated an agreement. We're still working on the union side of that, but that's our plan. And the price tag is significant. I believe the price tag is pushing $1 million, just shy of $1 million. And so that was one of the reasons we had seriously considered a two-part implementation, but to simplify things and make the implementation easier and more streamlined, we've decided, tentatively decided that we'll vote on here later today, but a one-time implementation, first payroll in January for those employees that we've negotiated an agreement.
I'm guessing the adjustments are kind of all over the board, or
They are.
vary?
They vary based on job description and the interviews that were done by Condrey. And the number of interviews is significant. We hit the majority of employees that had the opportunity to offer input, and that information is what they used in determining their recommendation. Any other comments, questions? Are you looking for a motion to implement? Is that
Yes,
what
I'm
the
gonna-
next step is for you, Erica?
Request that, yes, we implement Plan A modified.
I would move that.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Feichter and a second by Gage to implement the findings of the wage study, starting with the first payroll in January for non-union employees. And once an agreement is reached with the union, at that time, we will implement the results of the wage study and their recommendation to union eligible employees.
Yes, once we have completed negotiations with the union, I'll come back and request for them also.
Okay. Is there any further discussion? We have a motion and a second. I know this has been a long waited on and anticipated decision, and I'm glad that we've gotten to the point we've gotten to, but we needed to make this decision so the information can be ready for the beginning of the first payroll in January, which I think starts next Sunday, or this coming Sunday. So, is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Thank you, Erica, for all your work. Thank you all the employees for their diligence in doing the interviews, and the commissioners for their efforts, so.
Didn't mean to derail you there.
Oh, we're used to it.
It's only normal.
All right, that brings us to the end of our scheduled items, on to the consent calendar.
Approval of the general meeting minutes of December 13th, 2022.
Move. Second.
Motion by Weiss, second by Gage. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries.
Claims and payroll.
Move.
Motion by Feichter,
Second.
second by Weiss. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries.
HR reports.
Move. Second.
Motion by Gage, second by Weiss. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries.
Abatements.
Move.
Motion by Weiss,
Second.
second by Gage. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries.
Centennial Village Fair report.
Move.
Motion by Feichter,
Second.
second by Gage. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries.
Sheriff's report for October.
Move.
Motion by Weiss,
Second.
second by Gage. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries.
Oh, interesting meeting.
Oh, yeah.
Claim assignment.
Move.
Motion by Feichter, second by Weiss. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Any other business to come before the Brown County Commission this morning? Anything else? We've had a request to go into executive session to discuss personnel. Ross, any need for legal?
I can give you a quick update.
Okay. Entertain a motion to go into executive session.
Move.
Motion by Gage,
Second.
second by Weiss. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. We are in exec.
We went through.
All right, lights back on. We're back in session. Is there anything else to come before the Brown County Commission this morning?
Thanks.
Thank you, Scott.
Thank you, Scott. Merry Christmas, Scott.
If not, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Motion by Feichter, second by Gage. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Sounds like it came from Gage anyway. We are adjourned.
It don't